um, started my aviation career with an executive helicopter charter company as a scheduler and dispatcher, dabbled in a little bit of marketing for that company. And then when 9/11 happened, the company dissolved and I went into full-time marketing for Clear Channel, and then was fortunate enough years later to be offered a job at the Frederick Airport in Maryland as the director of marketing exclusively for a company that did aircraft charter maintenance. They had a flight school, avionics, aircraft sales. So I got to jump back in and kind of combine all of those passions. It was years later at that same location that I was able to create what is now the Aviation Education and Career Expo. And it's funny how things just kind of come together from your past for one greater purpose. And I feel like the expo was kind of my destiny, but without the social work and marketing background combined with aviation, I don't believe it could have ever happened successfully. So even though some of those things were trying times, it all came together for the greater good. And now I am the general manager of ProJet Aviation, which is a fixed base operation at Leesburg. And we tow airplanes, we fuel airplanes, we hangar airplanes, and we handle all of the customer service, hospitality needs of our clients that are both based here and transients flying in just for a stay in the DC area.
Great. That's a very interesting background. Looking forward to talking to you more about both shortly. Yvette, how about you tell us about you and where you're from and how you got involved in aviation?
Sure, absolutely. Thanks, Vince. I also do not have an aviation background by education. I started off first in my family to go to college. My parents were first generation immigrants. Community college was my first option for me, and I ended up going to University of Maryland, graduated in the business school with a focus in human resource management. So not aviation at all related. Got a job at a trade association, Cargo Airline Association. And, just for those interested, aviation, while it, you can think of airlines and, air traffic controllers and pilots, there's also the trade associations, mainly based in Washington, D.C., that represent a collective industry. So we represent the all cargo carriers like FedEx, UPS, et cetera. And it's been a really interesting career. I ended up going to law school. So I got my degree, have stayed at the Cargo Airline Association now for 26 years. It's obviously in most recent times, air cargo has clearly been vitally important to this pandemic, and just seeing the growth in the industry, it's incredibly dynamic. So the industry needs representatives, not just working for them directly, but also representing the industry. So most of my job is spent doing safety, regulatory with the government agencies here in Washington, D.C. So they're representative. A few years ago, I got involved with the Aero Club of Washington, sitting on their board back in 2013. And then in 2016 was named president of the Aero Club Foundation, which is its charitable arm, a nonprofit organization formed in 1995, whose mission is to promote aviation and aerospace as a career choice, specifically for District of Columbia public and public charter school students. Mainly underrepresented communities, minority population. So it's been an incredibly rewarding experience to bring aviation to those students. Where aviation might not otherwise reach. We fly kids on airplanes, we tour airports, and I'm happy to talk more about my programs, but in a little bit. But just personally, it's an example that while aviation was not my intended career path as a young person, it has brought me so many opportunities and opportunities to challenge myself and to give back. So happy to be here, happy to talk more about our programs.
And looking forward to it and happy to have you here. Allison, you have had a interesting start. You started in an interesting area with your career that has blossomed to where it is now. How about telling us a little bit about that?
So I will echo the sentiments of Julie and Yvette. I went to school, graduated with a marketing degree. I did not have my sights set on aviation either. But I graduated and I was looking for a job. My college roommate had interned for an airplane seat manufacturer in Winston-Salem, North Carolina. And she let me know that there was an opening in their sales and marketing department. So I applied and got the job. And that was really my first foray into the world of aviation. And it afforded me the ability to travel, meet all different kinds of people, really learn the industry from the ground up. And I wound up in their facility in Connecticut. And then 9/11 happened, and that really rocked our industry, similar to how it's been rocked this year. And they closed that facility. They moved the work overseas. And I was looking for a job. And I found another job opening for a marketing opening with a French aviation equipment manufacturer. And they were based in the DC area this time. And my parents were there, and it was one of those split second, do you want the job? And you have to just pick up and move over the weekend. And my parents welcomed me back for a period of time. Thank you.
That's always good.
And I spent almost 2 decades with that company, and I had a number of different great jobs, and again, cool experiences. And they made the decision that they wanted to bring their nonprofit foundation to the United States, since they had so many jobs and were supporting so many people in this country. And so I had the opportunity to start rolling out some nonprofit, some youth education programs in the United States. And I really kind of found my passion that way. From there, I went into a trade association, and I started working at Helicopter Association International. Again, a segment of the industry that I really didn't have much exposure to before that. And I ran their foundation, and we were really working on exposing young people to career opportunities in the helicopter segment of the industry, which sometimes gets overlooked to the Goliath of the airlines and commercial aviation. But we were in the same boat as commercial aviation in terms of job needs, skilled labor, pilots and mechanics were in such demand. And from there, I took the job in February here at Women in Aviation International. And I am really thrilled that this is kind of how my path unfolded. Did I see it happening when I took that first job at an airplane seat manufacturer? No, but I think that's the fun part of this industry, is you get to really try new things and expose yourselves to things you didn't even think were possible or options when you started.
I couldn't agree with you more about that. Sharon, you are up there in New York, and you too fall right in line with everybody else with a unique career path. How about telling us a little bit about that?
Yeah, there's a theme going here of people
Absolutely.
in aviation and who really enjoy being part of this industry. So yeah, it's the marketing communications thing is a theme too, because my degree's in communications. So all higher ed. Came to the institution in 96 as the director of communications. And I don't think anybody dreams of being a college president. And if they do, I don't know why, but just, it becomes a calling and a passion, probably very similar to Julie and Yvette and Allison's feeling as well, in this effort to really serve students who are just incredible. So yeah, I mean, I thought A&P was a grocery store when I started here, but I had to explain it to other people. And so I learned, what does it take to become a pilot? What does it take to become an avionics technician or an engineer or an airport manager? Or, any job you can think of, you can do in aviation. So Vaughn's about 1,500 students, mostly first-generation college students, first-generation Americans. Queens, the borough of New York City that we're in, is the most diverse county in the country. Over 140 languages spoken. It's an awesome place to be. And so our institution, which was founded in 1932, has always reflected the latest immigrant wave to the city. So there's times we're all German, all Russian, all Italian, and now we're mostly Hispanic. about 35% Hispanic, 20% Black, 14% Asian. About 80% of our students are from a minority background, which is what makes us even more incredible. Our average family income is a little less than 40,000. So really about transformation. There was a study done a few years ago by the Equality of Opportunity Project that got published in the New York Times that looked at those institutions that were the best at moving students from the bottom 40% income to the top. And this just tells you about the transformative nature of aviation. Is we were #1 in the country. So beating out the Harvards, all the big names. And that's just what a Vaughn degree can really do for you, whether it's to become an airframe and power plant technician or an engineer. So we do engineering degrees. We have graduate programs in management. We do 3 different management programs. Most of them have an aviation foundation to them because that's our history. But you will, and we'll probably talk a little bit about this too, when the industry is down and, this will not last. I like everybody on the panel.
Absolutely.
Through 9/11, and we came back even stronger, right? So this is a little bit of a blip. And sometimes students have to bob and weave, as we've all done in our careers as well. And so it's just there are skill sets that you're going to learn in an aviation education program that you can apply to lots of other industries.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So last piece is the very long name, which we've shortened to Youth and Aviation Task Force. And Yvette's also a wonderful task force member. There's 20 of us. And we're really looking specifically about how we can expand the pathways for women and underrepresented minorities to have careers in aviation and aerospace. And while it might seem like a strange time to be thinking about that, it's the perfect time to be thinking about that because we were dealing with such a shortage back in March, and it'll be back, right? And this kind of gives us a pause and a chance to really do some great thinking about when's the best time to approach students. What are the things that get them excited? How do we make sure that families that have typically not had exposure to aviation or aerospace get a chance to build an awareness and possibly choose this as a career field? So we've got about a year to do our work, and very excited. We had our first public meeting on the 16th of October. And so we'll make recommendations to the Department of Transportation this time next year in terms of what we think are the ideal pathways and how to eliminate lots of the barriers that are in place for underrepresented groups in aviation.
And that is why you guys are all on this program today to talk about a lot of the opportunities and events and programs that are going into 2021. It does sound strange to say, Sharon, that this is an opportune time, but it is, because right now everybody's kind of stuck in place to some degree, and relegated to Zoom, which we all love, right? But it also is an opportunity, and it's one of the goals with all things aviation is to let the younger generation know what's available out here and that they have options beyond what they normally hear. Yes, you can be an airline pilot. Yes, you could be a corporate pilot, but they don't know about a lot of the other things that take place. And some of them think you have to have an aerospace engineering degree or that you have to go in the military. And I'm not knocking the military. In fact, I had 5 great pilots on last week. But it's one of those things where there are other things out here. And we've been in pre-show. That's all we've been talking about is all the various opportunities. So with that said, I'm going to go back to you, Julie, because you've had a program that you started 15 years ago. Can you expand a little bit on your inspiration with that and the growth of it and what it is now accomplishing as a result?
Sure, I'd be happy to. The expo started 15 years ago out of necessity when I was doing that marketing job at the Frederick Airport. We were just getting inundated, or I was getting inundated with a lot of field trips from classes and Civil Air Patrol programs, pilot clubs, and it seemed like I was doing a lot of field trips. So I just kind of came up with the idea of, you get to know those instructors and teachers pretty well. And so I reached out to them and said, hey, what if we bring all of you in on one day and we do something a little more expansive? So we had about 100 kids that first year. And Frederick was a unique location because AOPA is there, Avemco is there, the Maryland State Police Medevac unit is there. There was a helicopter school there. And then, of course, all of the industry entities that Frederick Aviation offered. And so all of those people I invited in, we talked to the kids, we shared some of our experiences, and literally we gave them all a pencil. And that was that. And fast forward 15 years later and 3 locations later, and all of the job changes I've gone through since, we started a scholarship program 6 years ago, which now has raised over $2.1 million in aviation scholarships and flight training awards.
What did you guys start? What was your first scholarship amount? Please tell us that.
$2,000. $2,000 to a student. This is a great story for you kids out there. To a student that came from a STEM program here in Loudoun County and actually was a culinary arts student and just was not feeling the passion. We put a scholarship out there at the last minute for $2,000. He applied. His grandfather had been a pilot. He won. He wasn't even scheduled to attend the expo. I called the school. I said, "You've got to get him on the bus. You have to get him here." So he came and really didn't know why he was coming. And then when I called his name, he looked like a deer caught in headlights. He just could not believe. He even came up to the stage and looked at me and he said, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yes, I'm positive. You're the guy. You're the winner." So he came to see me after the expo and asked if he could intern with us for the summer. And of course I said yes. I was super excited that we had a scholarship winner and we could really cultivate this one student's dream. And so he went on and used that scholarship to go to Kansas State. Kansas State called me a year later and said, "Who is this kid?" He became the head of their student pilot organization.
Wow.
He came back the following year to the expo to represent Kansas State, who had never been involved, and brought a $15,000 scholarship with him, representing them to give away. Since he has gone on, he's now a captain with SkyWest. So that one day, that one essay changed his entire life. He's so happy. He's come back and been a guest speaker several times since then. And I could not be more proud, but that's how destiny just kind of steps in. He was like, "I just didn't know that I could get that excited about my future until that opportunity presented itself."
No, that's a great story. Let me ask you this, and I'm going to put it around the room too, but I'll continue with you, Julie. With all of the program, all of these events that you've done over the years and the number of kids that you've interacted with, what are some of the takeaways for you? What are some of the things that you've learned from the students that have come to participate in these events?
Well, I think the biggest takeaway for me, just interacting, just hosting the event, I've gotten to meet, so many industry professionals. I've worked with all of the women here on this panel or the organizations that they represent in one way or another. It's so inspiring to meet vendors that have opportunities to give, and whether it's a missions program or it's medical students that now want to be a medevac flight nurse, or maybe it's someone that always knew they wanted to go into law enforcement and now they realized they could fly for the Maryland State Police, or maybe it's somebody that knew that they really have a niche for photography, but now they go into, aerial mapping. And I think the biggest takeaway for the kids is that aviation is a very passionate industry and it's a very generous industry. And there is something out there for every single student.
Absolutely.
There's 4-year programs, there's 6-year programs, there's 2-year programs, and there are some very good, well-paying positions in this industry where you don't even have to go to college. Line service technicians, hospitality, a lot of it is on-job training, and reservations and flight attendant certifications and in-flight catering opportunities. I mean, you really can, if school isn't really your thing, you can still find a place in this industry that pays very well and is still very exciting. And if school is your thing and you want to go to the moon, there's that also.
Well, where you start is not where you finish, right? You may start on the ramp and end up in the cockpit. I mean, sometimes you don't even know what you want.
Absolutely, great point.
Exposed to things. So.
Yeah, that's a really great point you were saying there, Sharon. And I was just going to add in too that something that you keyed in on a little bit, Julie, is that people actually people as in the vendors or the aviation companies, they're very open to new, fresh blood. They're open to these kids reaching out to them and indicating an interest. So on one side of it, you're trying to get the kids interested in letting them know what the availability is, but on the other side, these companies are very ready to receive that. Is I get what I'm really trying to say.
They
So
are.
and
And people like Allison, I mean, women in aviation do an amazing job of reaching out and doing scholarships and getting out in front of these kids. And, she can probably Allison can speak more to that, but there's so much help out there in this industry to help
Exactly.
kids get across the finish line. And I think that's really important for students to understand.
Allison, that's your cue.
Yeah, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, I think that there are, Women in Aviation International is one example, but there are so many avenues to support and include kids in this industry. We start with Girls in Aviation Day, which is an event that's kind of tailored towards the 8 to 17-year-old girl and boy. And expose them to all the career possibilities that exist, mentors, tours, everything that this industry has to offer. And it's really guided by all of those that are so passionate about what they do and how they've come to where they are. This year, obviously, we weren't able to host any in-person events, so we created an app that had all the you would come to expect in Girls in Aviation Day in person, but on your tablet or computer or your phone. And this year we were able to reach 55 countries who downloaded the app. So there is such an international interest to this industry that I think we just have the potential to keep growing and growing. But some of the careers are expensive to get into if you want to fly. And so in 1995 we created our scholarship program, and to date we've given away $13.2 million. And it just shows the giving back mentality that our industry has, the amount of support that we have received to be able to offer this much money, whether it's a personal donor or an airline or another corporation. But it just shows the enthusiasm that exists in this industry and the desire to show it to others. And that's kind of my takeaway is when I've been around young people are in an aviation program or are interested in one is just that passion that they have for it, and willingness to tell you all about it is kind of infectious.
Yeah, I'm glad you guys are bringing up about the different programs, that type of thing, because there are a number of organizations beyond you guys that also have various programs that I would have had a panel of 12 if I had everybody on. But I will mention a couple. National Business Aviation Association has a YoPro program. I think that program's been in motion now for about 6 or 7 years, run by Sierra Grimes. And that program has opened up a lot of opportunities to connect. And the key to their particular program that I think is a good point to make is that their program, they noticed at conventions that there was a bit of a disconnect with the younger attendees versus everybody else, us. and so they were like, well, how can we connect? And then Sierra Grimes came up with the idea of creating this young professionals program. It got narrowed down to YoPro. We have to have an acronym in aviation. That's just the way things go. And now that program is a very robust, very viable program. Every year, the younger people are looking forward to it, and they have mixers and they have different networking events, even outside of the actual convention and that type of thing. So that plays a role. Everybody, we all know about the EAA's Young Eagles program that's been around for a very long time. And it's kind of neat because of the way they use their Young Eagle branches, if you will, throughout the country, chapters throughout the country to be able to reach out and give kids their first experience with it. But at the same time, what is happening with what we're going to talk even more about today is giving kids experiences about and information about opportunities beyond just what we normally see. Again, beyond being the pilot, although we're not discouraging anybody that has that passion or that desire to become a pilot to do so, but there's so many other things to offer out there. I'll pivot a little bit, and I'm gonna pivot to both you, Sharon, and to Yvette. You both deal with the underserved. And that is an area that is often overlooked, but there is some great talent that comes out of that area. Can you guys talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, thanks. I'd love to jump in. Actually, piggybacking to Julie's story about that one student, I couldn't help but be sort of inspired by the story of the opportunity he had. He had an opportunity, and everyone in every single one of our lives are given opportunities. So it's those kinds of things. Now, all those opportunities may not be equal to everyone. So it's ensuring that we can give the exposure to aviation and aerospace to those communities that aviation may not otherwise reach again. So for me, it's been incredibly rewarding to be able to give that to a student, because they have the creative talents, they have the desire, and it just was not maybe something within the scope of what they thought was possible. And we've heard so many stories from young people that aviation changed their lives. If you want to travel, if you want to see the world, aviation offers that to you. If you have, a creative side to you, an artistic side to you, we need folks to design airports. I would challenge young people to maybe go to an airport, check it out, look around, not be intimidated by the aviation career choices that are out there. And I know Sharon's institution that offers some programs right out of high school, some technical training opportunities that, students are very accessible. And the Aero Club Foundation also has a $5,000 scholarship. And we've given it away for 3 years now. And so it can be used for not just a university, college, but for flight school, technical school. And we're just so excited to see where those kids, the potential and where they end up.
Sharon,
Yeah.
you want to add to that?
Yeah, there's sort of two issues for underrepresented groups. First is awareness, right? If they don't have an uncle, brother, cousin, father kind of situation, they just don't know that it's even an option. And then the other one is financial. So, and not just for pilots, right? I mean, pilots probably the most expensive because it's $60,000 to $70,000, at least in our area, on top of the cost of tuition. But even for our A&P program, you're talking roughly $35,000 to get an airframe and power plant certification to become a technician, right? And some of those kinds of programs feel inaccessible, right? So one of the big things that we have to do is make sure that families know, how do you get access to those funds, right? So the first thing is make sure you fill out the FAFSA, the free application for federal student aid. Do not leave federal or state money on the table. We're fortunate in that New York is very generous to its residents, very much on par with Pell, which is the federal grant for the neediest students. But it also helps determine institutional aid. If your family happens to be needy, you may be eligible for more funds. The other, and we've touched on this a little bit, is that you have to be your own advocate in terms of using Google to find the money. So we named a couple of them: ISTAT, NARA, NAFA. I mean, Women in Aviation. I mean, there's a whole bunch of organizations that are out there. You just have to know, right? And you have to be your own sort of advocate. Guidance counselors, completely stressed out, have too many students. There was a study done by Rebecca Ludy from University of Nebraska that looks specifically at the role that guidance counselors plays. And oftentimes they don't know anything about aviation. And when the students do go to them, it tends to be negative, right? Because they just don't know. I'm not blaming them at all. They have, some of them have 1,000 students as part of their caseload. There's no way that they're going to have every possible degree program at their fingertips and say, oh yeah, I know exactly where you should go, right? So making sure that we're getting information into the hands of families in a way that really helps them to understand what's possible and how they can afford it can help change things, I think.
Absolutely. Can you tell us more, Sharon, about the Youth and Aviation Task Force that you now chair? You mentioned it earlier and some of the goals, but what exactly are you guys really wanting to accomplish as you roll that into next year for approval to move it along further?
Yeah, so I mean, some of the things that we've already talked about that seem to be really important is a clearinghouse where all of these things are housed, right? Julie's got an incredible program that somebody in Oregon might be looking to start up. And rather than start from scratch, if they knew what you were doing, they could stand something up fairly quickly, right? It's also learning about maybe Julie's program is the program that we bring to scale across the country, right? And knowing what your outcomes look like and how much funding you need and those kinds of issues help us to understand what's scalable and what's not, right? So some kind of central clearinghouse website that includes, sort of best in class programs, what kind of funding streams they have, what kind of outcomes they have, that allows students and families to find programs that are local to them, but also to understand what are the possibilities. The other piece is the funding piece, right? I would bet that all of us, while very friendly and love each other, are also competing for the same dollars, right?
You think?
Allison's going to go to the same airline I'm going to go to ask for money. And so
Absolutely.
how do we not compete with each other and serve as many students as possible?
No, I think those are two great points. And yes, the funding is something that everybody is seeking from the same folks. And if there's a way to not only make it fair, but to kind of consolidate things, that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to piggyback on that real quick,
Go
Vince.
ahead. Sure. No, go ahead.
I loved after our public meeting on the youth task force, the how-to aspect of it, kind of going back to the awareness piece. So, what's a dispatcher? What even is
Right.
Technicians are in need right now. Airframe manufacturer, technician, repairmen. So those kinds of things I think are great.
Yeah. No, I think that goes back to what everybody has said at some point, that what is happening, and I was going to say this earlier, young people right now are kind of in a panic mode because they're like, oh my God, things are at a halt, nothing, can't really finish pursuing or continue pursuing what I'm doing, or if I am, what does it mean, et cetera. So there's a lot of questions in the air about what ways to go, or what are the opportunities, and so I think it's really important to be able to give to make them more aware of what they can do and where they can find that out. And that's one of our points with this, to go to your various websites, as Sharon said, to Google, but to go to, in specific with you guys, to go to your website and figure out how they can engage and get more involved, and learn about some of the programs that you're doing and that type of thing. Of course, Julie wants everybody to come to her event next year. Yep. Oh, I'm sorry. Allison wants everybody to come to her event next year. So, but no, that's exactly what we're trying to do. There are a couple things I want to make sure I don't forget about. I was writing a note about it. One is I wanted to give you, Allison, a chance to talk a little bit more about Girls in Aviation Day. I think that's something that it's kind of like Julie's scholarship program. It has grown and grown and grown, and now it's a thing.
It's a force.
It's a force.
And we are so excited every year when we are able to put it on. We do two events, one in conjunction with our annual conference, which is typically in March. It will be in March of 2021. And that's focused on the young people that are in the city, at the location where our conference is held. Next year, it's going to be in Reno, Nevada. So we'll target the geographic area around that center. And then the second one is typically in the fall, and it's going to be in September. And the one that we really look to a lot of help for. We have a robust chapter network, and our chapters put on a lot of these in-person events throughout the world. This is not just a US centric day. And you know, you can host an event that that brings 10, 20 kids to your location. But we have some that are thousands of young people that descend upon airports and large organizations in a very organized fashion to expose them to everything that this industry has to offer, from what they know this industry to be, you know, mechanics and pilots and, you know, someone who works at an airport, not sure what you do, but I'm going to figure it out, to some of the more unique opportunities that exist. You know, the one that kind of comes to mind that even being so long wasn't aware of is I met the chief marketing officer from Gulfstream, and she was telling me about their need for interior designers, because those are the people that design the interiors of their aircraft. And it had really never come into my thought process that a kid going to school for an interior design degree, you know, would be a fit in aviation. But of course, those are skills that are needed for not only designing airports, but the insides of these fantastic cockpits and cabins. So we're really just trying to give young women an understanding of the opportunity that exists. We're trying to move the needle of the diversity that exists, that will exist in our industry. And I think that this is a great time to really put all of our focus on how do we come back from this awful pandemic that has really rocked our industry, stronger, more diverse, more inclusive than we were before. And programs like Girls in Aviation Day are a step in the right direction. I'm on the FAA's Women in Aviation Task Force, and those are some of the things that we're thinking about, is how do you really change statistics that have markedly been unchanged decades. There's been a lot of money thrown towards programs to be more diverse, and we really haven't seen the needle move much. So in this time of downturn, it's how do we really develop programs that are going to be as inclusive as our neighborhoods and our communities are. And, you know, Vaughn College is a great example of really offering opportunity to such a diverse group of people.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, yeah, bringing that up and talking about diversity and inclusion, I kind of like to hear from all of you your perspectives on STEM. STEM is the thing, and it's interesting that we had some, again, pre-show conversation about it, but we should bring it up now about the different opportunities from the STEM, engineering, technical, computer science, et cetera, so forth, that people that are studying that don't realize that all of that is very applicable to both aviation and aerospace.
I mean,
Yeah.
I can start. Drones are the next wave, you know, unmanned vehicles. So especially in the cargo world, and air cargo right now is hiring, looking for people. So if you have that kind of interest, we're ready for that, you know, pipeline to help fill the jobs, because that is the future. So in the STEM world, you know, drones and you know, commercial space, it's just, there's so much happening in aviation.
Yeah, I mean, right along with what Yvette was saying, you know, cybersecurity is the other tremendous one, right? For every aircraft that's out there sending information back to the ground, every drone that has information sending it back to the ground, all of those things are going to, so, you know, those computer science folks should really think about the aviation world as a place to put their skills to really good use. You know, we suffer as an industry from things that aren't easily defined, right? How many times have we had to explain what avionics is, right? Because nobody really knows what that is. Or people use that word interchangeable with aerospace or something.
Right.
Airport manager, right? I mean, we say things like, you know, it's like running a small city. right? You got every element of a small city included in airport management. But, you know, students that aren't familiar with aviation, it doesn't pilot's easy. The guy in the, or the woman, hopefully, in the left seat in an aircraft. But a lot of the
Scheduling and dispatching.
right, dispatch, right? Great job. And demand, huge demand for dispatch. Air traffic control, we haven't even touched on air traffic control. My next life, I'm coming back as an air traffic controller. You know, they have awesome jobs with great benefits and pay. And, you know, I often tell our flight students, if they're having a hard time affording flight lessons, go be an air traffic controller. You'll be able to afford all the flight lessons you want. So, but, you know, unless you've got somebody in your family or you know somebody who's in that field, it's not something that you think of. So.
No, absolutely. Point well taken. Julie, have you seen an increase in the interest in the STEM aspect of aviation through your most recent events?
Yeah, we have a lot of STEM programs that actually attend, and some of them have aerospace engineering classes. Some of them bring auto mechanic classes or carpentry classes or criminal justice classes, because they can all be intertwined with aviation. And something I would suggest that we haven't talked about, I mean, the scholarships are great once you know what you want to apply the money to. But I am a big cheerleader for internships. I think it gets your feet wet. I think there's a lot of aviation companies out there that offer them. And, you know, right now, even during the pandemic, I have a high school intern and 2 college interns working for me. And they do all want to stay in the aviation industry, but they've really gotten to see boots on the ground, working every day, what that looks like and what the opportunities are, and talking to some of our other clients that are in other aspects of aviation. You know, we have a client that's a former astronaut. You know, there's just, people are so willing to share their experiences. And, you know, General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, NASA, as well as some of the aircraft maintenance shops locally, they all want to hire interns. And these are paid internships I'm talking about.
Absolutely.
So actually start working and get in there and find out if it's really for them. And then you go after the money and you decide what degree or program or certification you want to go after. But I'm a big cheerleader for internships. I think it really helps pique your interest and find out what you are passionate about.
That is a very valid point. And there are tons of paid internships that are available. Interestingly enough, sometimes they're a challenge of getting enough people to apply for them. So that's a wide open one. I'm sure the rest of you have something to say about it, but I have to add to that because I've had a number of companies on the show who are representatives from companies on the show. And that's one of the main things they talk about is the great internship programs that they have. So I'm glad you brought that up, Julie. Did anybody else want to add into that?
Yeah, I would just say that oftentimes students will come back to me and say, "Oh, I hated that." I said, "Good for you. Now you know what you don't want to do, right?" I mean, that's as
Exactly.
simple as knowing what you want to do. No, I think, you know, the other piece is it helps greatly in terms of networking, It's building a resume. Oftentimes now, this wasn't true even 5 years ago, they're paid. Like Julie said, we had students who had to choose between working or an internship, you know, and we talk to companies on a consistent basis, don't make students choose, just pay, right? So the fact that they're now paying means a student can actually get some work experience and figure out where they want to be involved or where they don't want to be involved. So no, they're tremendous in terms of starting your career. And oftentimes, if it's a good fit, that company will offer that student a full-time job upon, sometimes right before graduation. They say, "Will you please hold off? Let me finish school first." But no, they're great.
Did we lose Vince?
Vince, we can't hear you.
It always helps if I turn my mic back on and the mute off, you know. I was saying, no, at the beginning of the show, we all were talking, or you all were talking about the different paths that you took to get where you are. And I think that when you talk about things like an internship program and networking and that type of thing, that we want the young people out here watching to understand that you never know. Even if you get an internship, as Sharon was saying, that didn't really pan out the way you want, you still probably met some people that may be a factor down the road. But if you did get one that panned out, either it could lead to a job at the same organization, or it could lead to something else because of the people that you met.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that networking piece is hugely important. I mean, people are stronger together, and that you never know the opportunities again that can just come your way.
Yeah. While I have you, Yvette, one of the things I wanted to ask you to tell us a little bit more about, because it was a neat program that you've done where you have taken, it's twofold. You've taken students, you got one of the airlines to actually fly them to a business aviation convention and experience that entire thing, which I thought was really neat for them to be able to do. And it was great that the airline offered the tickets for them. Tell us a little bit about how you came about doing that, putting that together, and also what your relationship is like with the schools, as an example, in the district.
Yeah, that event was life-changing for many of those students. United Airlines, a generous donor who actually sits on the board of governors of the Aero Club. So again, we have that relationship, and kind of going back to Sharon's point about having to, seek out the same funding sources, but they really, one of their pillars of, donations and giving back is, the next generation, inspiring the next generation of aviators. So our program fits right in. So we flew, I think it was 12 students from the District of Columbia high schools, 2 different high schools, down to Orlando to attend the National Business Aviation Association's annual conference. And it's a huge event. I mean, it's not only the conference showroom floor, which kind of going back to what Allison was saying about how she started as an airplane seat manufacturer. These kids got to see the booth that had the seats, and then the seat belts, and then the engines, I mean actual aircraft engines, which for them were just so cool. And then got to tour the aircraft, the Gulfstream, the Cessna. I mean, that was very cool for them. Open their eyes. One of the students, and I told this story before on our youth task force meeting, she sat down in one of the booths, had a simulator. And she sat down in it, put the goggles on, was all in. She got up and she's like, wow, I want to do this. This was amazing for me. This is my passion. I'm all in. She applied for our scholarship. She's now soloed her first flight already. I mean, it took almost just a year for her to get to that point. So it was incredibly inspiring. And I think that event I would love to do, and we did it again the next year. So sent kids down to Las Vegas. So I hope to continue it. I know it's virtual this year, but oftentimes too, it is the teachers at the schools that view that and are able to get the authority, within their school district to get these kids. So it is oftentimes the teachers that recognize the value of exposure outside the classroom.
Sure. We're starting to run out of time. One of the things that I'd like to come back to and cover in a little bit more detail is networking and mentoring. I think all of you in different forms with your different programs, relationships in aviation, your event, Julie as an example, et cetera, it represents mentoring and networking opportunities. Can we all kind of can you give us your take on that?
Yeah, I guess I'll start and just say I would not be where I am today without the power of my network, but also individual mentors along my way that encourage you, that support you, sometimes push you a little farther than you think you're ready to go. And so when you are starting out, even at the college level, it is so important to find a group of people that will support you, guide you, especially if you don't have aviation in your family, to give you the step-by-step approach to the path of your potential career. I still look at people that I met in my first job at that seat company in Winston-Salem as such such a key part of my career path. And it's not always straight. And so those are the people that you need when it does take those crazy zigzags that everybody's career takes.
Sharon?
Yeah, I mean, it's so interesting because I was just having a conversation with two of our recent graduates, one who's working for Northrop Grumman and the other one who's working as a flight instructor. And we talked a little bit about mentors, and they said, it changes over time. So the one that you start with may not be the one that you need 5 years from now. And that oftentimes it's not until you start to narrow down sort of where you want to be that's when you really can find the best connections and the best mentors, because you're very clear about what you need, right? Or you've been able to network to the people that can be very helpful. So I would just say that it's probably going to change over time. I mean, I'm just like Allison, I would not be where I am today without a mentor, right? The last president for Vaughn was an incredible mentor to me for 17 years, and definitely said to me long before I thought about it, you think you want to be a college president? I was like, what? So, sometimes you need a mirror, you need somebody who can help provide guidance and push you to go do the things that maybe you aren't comfortable doing. And it's going to change over time. And then how cool is it to be a mentor back to other people when you've benefited? There is nothing like that in terms of rewards.
Yvette, I saw you nodding in agreement with both of their comments.
Yeah, that giving back piece really speaks to me. We're so fortunate, and aviation has been able to give us this opportunity to have such a diverse network of individuals. I've been able to meet people not only in the DC area but outside, and it's been so rewarding now to give back into the classroom and reach young people.
Yeah, Julie?
I would just speak directly to the students that are watching the program and say, this is your destiny. You have to own it. So when it comes to mentoring, select your mentors wisely and spend as much time with them as you can. Surround yourself with greatness, right? It's a cliche, but it's true. Join the right clubs. Look at the best intern opportunities. Look at summer programs. Look at virtual clubs right now. Start seeking these things out that make you the person that you've always wanted to be. There's a lot of stuff out there, but at the end of the day, it's your life and it's your future, and you have to seize it and you have to take control of it. So I think you should seek out the qualities in people that you admire most and spend as much time with those people as you possibly can.
Yeah, can I just add to what Julie's saying, which I should have said before, especially right now, but this was true prior to the pandemic, is that small institutions like Vaughn, we can't have, we're not going to get 100 companies. We'll get some companies, but 100 companies won't send reps to our career fair. And so what has changed over time is sending our students to things like the Women in Aviation Conference is where they're networking, where they're having their first job interview, where they're getting their first job. So that's true for the Society for Hispanic Professional Engineers, or the Society for Women Engineers, or Women in Aviation, or the National Society of Black Engineers, right? There's all these great organizations that's what they're all about, is about networking, mentoring, getting you to your first job. And so if while you're in college, you're not squeezing out every single opportunity you can from clubs, organizations, and the Career Services Office, then you're not getting your money's worth. So make sure you're getting the most value you can out of your college experience.
So I was going to say, well said, Julie. Now I got to say, well said, Sharon. Well said, Yvette. Well said, Allison. No, I'm just kidding. Speaking though of Allison, though, when is your, well, let me back up. So Julie, one of the things I was going to just give you a chance to remind people of, your event is 1 year from today.
29th, yeah, it is.
The 29th, out there at Leesburg Executive Airport. So I'm sure you're looking forward to that, and hopefully things will be somewhere near normal so that you can have the type of event you've always had.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it. And we did make the decision, this year was just so crazy. And so we just canceled everything because it was just the craziest thing I've ever had to deal with. In addition,
we've all had that experience.
But we did make the decision as a committee that when we asked for scholarship donations for 2021, God forbid, I'm a faithful woman. I believe everything's going to go off without a hitch and we're going to be back on track. However, if for some reason that wasn't the case, we're going to honor the scholarships in 2021, regardless of the event.
Oh, that's wonderful. That is wonderful. Allison, when is your Women in Aviation and where next year?
Reno, Nevada, March 11 through 13. And like Sharon said, it is the most fantastic networking and professional development event I have been to. The energy of the attendees is just, it's never been matched by any other show I've been to. I mean, these are passionate women and men that that want to expose everybody to the gift that this industry has given them. You know, I am hopeful that that we will be able to host it in person in March, and get everybody back together as a kickoff to 2021.
And Sharon, what should we look for next year with the Aero Club of, I'm sorry, Aero Foundation of Washington? I'm going to just mess that up totally.
Oh, the Youth and Aviation Task Force?
Well, no. Well, yeah, Youth and Aviation for you. I'm actually mixing people up. That means it's time for me to sign off. Go ahead, Sharon.
Oh, yeah. So we've got 4 subcommittees set up with the task force. Those task forces are already doing a lot of the work. We're hoping to have at least preliminary recommendations, you know, sometime late spring, early summer, so that we can spend the summer months really preparing a great set of recommendations for the FAA and the Department of Transportation, who are really open and eager to see how far we can take this.
Okay, and I was trying to say the Aero Club Foundation of Washington,
No
Yvette,
problem.
and
No
what
problem, Vince.
what you guys have for 2021. Primarily.
Yeah, if there's anyone out there in the Washington, D.C. area school district, please get in touch with us that isn't already participating in our programs. Our scholarship is available to any student within the greater D.C. area. So that's Maryland, Virginia, and D.C. So we'll just, you know, stay tuned on our website and Twitter for events.
And I
Ladies,
just
it's
want to
been
plug one thing before we go, is that
Sure.
our scholarships are open right now. So go to our website, wai.org, and you can see the 150 plus scholarships that are available for application right now.
Thank you. Ladies, it's been a pleasure to have you all on the show. You've given some terrific information about what you're doing, what's available, and how to go about it. So it's been wonderful. On behalf of the Bob Hoover Legacy Foundation, I would be remiss not to tell that we also do scholarships and are in the process of our scholarship program kicking in early November. And we are actually going to be growing that program to provide scholarships primarily to college students who are on the pilot track and professional flight with their professional pilot goals and that type of thing. So again, I'd like to thank you all for taking the time to be available, and want to wish everybody well for the rest of this year and going into 2021, and appreciate you being on the show.
Thanks, Vince.
Thank you. Stay safe.
Thank you. You too. Goodbye, everybody.